Did Adrian say he's ready?
Yes, he's working on it.
Okay, good.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I want to welcome everyone out to our August regularly scheduled meeting of the Clay County Board of Education. Go ahead and get everything started for this evening, and we'll start with Mr. Caldwell reading our Clay County Schools mission statement.
The mission of Clay County Schools is to build high-quality learning environments that ensure all students learn at high levels.
And just a couple of announcements as a reminder. On Wednesday, I think that's a Wednesday, September 7th at 5:30, we'll have another special meeting to review the mask situation, just based on what the numbers are in Clay County. We're going to review that again. And our next regular board meeting will be held on September 27th. And at this time, I'll entertain a motion that we approve the agenda as it is in front of you.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Ms. Crawford.
I'll second.
Mr. Caldwell, second. All in favor? Thank you. And I forgot one other thing too.
Ms. Beck, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Did you vote on the approval of the agenda? In favor of the motion?
I'm in favor, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
And Ms. Beck, I failed to mention that you're unable to attend in person tonight, so we've got her on speakerphone, so we'll kind of let her chime in as we can. So I apologize, I didn't address that when we started. So at this time, we'll take public comment. We have a couple people signed up for public comment, and just a reminder that each person gets 3 minutes. And we've got the iPad up here. Hopefully we can turn that around and you'll be able to see that, kind of keep yourself on track. And we're going to start with Mr. Paul Rose this evening.
Is it acceptable to take my mask
It
off?
is. Yes. And while you're speaking, you can remove your mask. Thank you.
Well, then you won't have to pick me up off the floor. Maybe, no problem. Before my time starts, Superintendent, I'd like to thank you for following up with me before. Enjoyed having a candid chat with you, so I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So now I can start the clock. So I did take you up on your challenge to go read the new standards. And when I don't sleep much, and at 3:26 in the morning, when even the dogs don't want to be disturbed, this is what I do. I did want to go to find a specific definition of critical race theory. And according to Britannica, I thought this summed it up pretty well. Intellectual movement and loosely organized framework of legal analysis based on the premise that race is not a natural, biological, grounded feature of physical distinct subgroups of human beings, but a socially constructed, culturally invented category that is used to oppress and exploit people of color. So for the standards, there's a document called a crosswalk where it compares the 2010 to the 2000. You're shaking your head, so I assume. And I just picked out a couple of examples. On page 64, the old standard apply historical thinking, please remember that phrase, to understand the creation and development of North Carolina and the United States. So the crosswalk between the 2010 and the 2021 objectives, two of the items are basically the same. There's a new one added. The addition comes right out and says, explain how slavery, segregation, voter suppression, reconcentration, and other discriminatory practices have been used to suppress and exploit certain groups within North Carolina and the nation over time. That's new. So it's telling the kids that through these filters, they should look and assess history instead of just learning history. Instead of leaving the filters through which they should assess these things to their families, their parents, their churches, this gives an opportunity for the school to tell the kids what the appropriate filters are that they should assess and decide how to digest what has happened in history. That's one example. Another example is it talks to explain how values and beliefs influence the creation and implementation of public policy and laws. In the 2010 objectives, it asks specifically about the contributing to theories impacting the writing of the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, and the Bill of Rights to help promote liberty, justice, and equality. In addition, it talks about identify how America's national identity is derived from the principles in those documents. In the new standard, it goes to explain how individual values and societal norms contribute to institute discrimination and the marginalization of minority groups living under the American system of government. Never in there is mentioned any of the founding documents. And if you'll bear with me for another minute, I'll give you another example.
Is the board okay with another minute? Yeah.
Okay.
One more minute.
I'll be quick. Explain the causes. The old objective looked at to analyze the political issues and conflicts that impacted the United States through Reconstruction and the compromises that resulted. It also talks to the economic issues and conflicts, social and religious, in terms of participants, strategies, oppositions, and results. The new one reads, and it sums all of that up only by saying, explain the causes and effects of various domestic conflicts in terms of race, gender, and political, economic, and societal factors. So, granted, CRT is not specifically identified as such in here, but looking at the definition not only as it's written by an authority, but as we all gather from things we've digested about CRT, here it is in black and white in those new standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Next, we have Mr. Jim Johnson.
Thank you all for allowing me to speak tonight. My comments will be brief. I had asked Mr. Cole about a day or so ago, or maybe it was earlier today, maybe, what the objective or what the status was of the non-discrimination resolution that I had submitted at last month's board meeting. The response was that the board had decided to bounce that back up to the state, let them make that decision. And so my question is, if I can ask a question, is what was the thought process behind bouncing that back up to the state?
Well, what I can say is normally the board doesn't answer questions during public comment, but that was at our school board attorney's suggestion. When I put it to him, there's a lot of work going on at the state level right now, specific to that resolution. Almost the exact language in that resolution was in the approved budget from the North Carolina House. I feel like the Senate version will have that language as well. So I think that actually the state is going to be making a decision on this in parallel with the budget. There's a good chance of that. And so our board attorney pointed that out and said that he would advise the board to just wait and not get ahead of the state on this, that there was really, he didn't feel like it would be prudent to get ahead of the state on this at this time.
Okay, thank you. My other comment here is directly to the elected board members here. I would encourage you to, if you haven't already done so, to spend some time. You don't have to get up at 3:47 like Mr. Rose did, but I would encourage you to spend some time to look at these standards, because there are certain buzzwords in there that are definitely CRT buzzwords. And so you need to be familiar with that. You need to take a look at this, and you need to determine, whether or not this is the road that we want to go down. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, just real quick as a follow-up to that, remember that the standards themselves is a state board decision, that our school board doesn't have any authority over the standards themselves, other than just as citizens.
Could I reply to that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You can take those standards and say, yes, these things happened within North Carolina. I mean, that's our history. And again, no one is suggesting that we not teach accurate history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But as far as those standards are concerned, those standards can be taken and added to in such a way that it looks like, or is presented to the kids, to the students, that America is a racist, systematically racist country, and kids come out the other end of this thing hating America, hating our foundation, not really knowing the results. So it can go two ways. It can be a history, or it can be an indoctrination. And I'm hoping it turns out to be more of a history than an indoctrination. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Jim. Next, we have Ms. Karen Trout.
Just to follow up to Paul, and I'm here for a different reason, but a follow up for the CRT buzzwords. I did a comparison, and I'm a teacher. I'm a retired teacher. I did a comparison of the 2010 and the 2021. Sorry, but I'm so little. The words that are blatantly overused over and over and over in the new standards is racism, oppression, and privilege. I do want y'all to be aware there are many school districts across our country that have taken a stand and said, we will not teach CRT regardless of state. I just throw it out there, and I hope that we can step up and understand that there are a lot of things here to be considered, and our kids are number one. A new note for me, I do volunteer here at the school with the lower grades, and it's a privilege. I know that the masks are coming back. I do want y'all to take in consideration, this was published in February by the American Medical Association, and I'm going to quote, young children not only are at low risk for developing COVID, but don't play a significant role in spreading it. Age 0 through 9, and that's the children I deal with, have shown not only in this study, but observationally over 1.5 years of study that this group has little to do with the spread of COVID. Another study of 25,000 students showed masks are harming kids physically, psychologically, and behaviorally. There are 24 distinct health issues. The three most concerned are fatigue during school, difficulty concentrating, and being distracted. I have personally witnessed this. Last year when we had the mandate, this is what kids would do all day long. Kids come to school with homemade, whatever. It's not doing anybody any good, not for these little kids. I can understand in the upper grades, there's a lot more contact, there's a higher risk of getting COVID, but these primary and elementary students, one, they need to see their teacher's expression, and the teacher needs to see their expression. When they're trying to learn phonetically how to read, it's imperative that they see mouths. We have reading circles. They cannot see anything other than eyes when these masks are on. So just to sum up, I really hope that y'all can use logic and let these little kids be mask-free or voluntary basis. Thank you for hearing me out again.
Thank you, Ms. Trout. Good. Got it. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Appreciate your time and your thoughts and your interest in Clay County Schools. At this time, we'll move into the report section of our agenda. First on that is Communities for Students Annual Report with Ms. Teresa Waldron.
Mr. Adrian is going to hit the go button. Go ahead, yes. as you can see, we did have a productive year. It was, of course, challenging like all the others, but we had 5 volunteers that were committed to us the entire year that do the tutoring, and of course Miss Karen was one of those, and we thank her for that. We have 12 coming back this year. We have 5 that are coming back to do special events, and then the others have assured us, out of our 30, that they hope to be back next year. We appreciate our new space. As you can see, all the different spaces that we've got are nice and roomy, and we were able to also bring over our school supplies from my storage room, so they're in the CFS room at the elementary school upstairs. So it's just going to make that delivery of those supplies a lot easier. And we are looking forward this year to be able to do more of our true tutoring. Now, we were able to do that in our primary school more so than we were in our middle and our high school, and somewhat in our elementary. I will be very candid with you. Our volunteers and our site coordinator, Karen Dudley, and our student tutor, Pam Arrowood, the majority of their time was spent helping students get their homework completed. So we know that. But this year we are going to hit the ground running. We're going to start earlier than we ever have. We've done our site planning with all of our principals, and we're hoping to actually get started as early as maybe the second week of September. So we're excited about that. But I also want to just express to you the fact that, yes, our little ones and our big ones are coming back with some deficits. We know that, but we're committed, just as the teachers, and I know that you are, to help our children, because they are our children. And I know that you care about them as much as I do. But lastly, I just wish and pray for all to have a healthy and a year of wholeness for all of our students, for you as well. You can see that we were so blessed with grants this past year. I came and reported on those, and I am pleased to say that they are all completed with the exception of the one that is the tutoring grant. We have that until the end of December, so all that will be expended. So again, just a very blessed year, and we are thankful for that. Do you have any questions that I can answer from our video? If not, thank you for your time.
Thank
Just
you.
as always, thank you, Teresa.
Yes.
Next, we have a new student course report from Mr. Ogle.
Good evening, school board, and Mr. Cole. I had some information I wanted to share with you all about some new courses that we've been fortunate enough to offer this year. First, I just want to say we had a great first day of school today. Everything went off, without a hitch. Everything's always hectic the first day and then smooths out. But it was great seeing the students back in full force. We had 363 students enrolled this morning, and other than quarantines and remote students, we only had 14 absences. So that's a huge first day, about 96% attendance. New courses this year. First, we have creative writing with Miss Kim Chastain. That is a new course to the high school, and Kim is new to the high school as well. So looking forward to seeing how that course goes. Also, Miss Carla Beck will be teaching teacher cadets. This is a grow your own teachers type of program, but it's not really just for teachers. Carla learned in her talk with the teacher cadet folks at the state level that this is also a really good opportunity for anybody who's interested in social type of programming. That could be a youth minister, it could be a school psychologist, a lot of different possible future careers might be interested in this class. We also have Appalachian Studies with John Hensley. I think this one's going to be really popular. I've actually heard a lot of adults, including myself, say that I'd like to take that course. And as somebody who 4 years ago would have said Appalachian, I think I might need to take that course. The course I really need to take is Lifetime Wellness with Coach McClure. That's going to focus not so much on weight training, but more on fitness for the rest of your life. Walking, pickleball, aerobic activity, that type of thing. And then a new class that has been, it's a state requirement for this entering class of 2025, our freshmen who started today, is economics and personal finance. Mr. Nicholson's going to be teaching that. And that's one of those things that I've heard, several times that, kids graduate from high school and they can do all these linear equations, but they don't know how mortgage interest works or how to balance a checkbook. Well, they're going to start learning now with Mr. Nick. So really pleased to offer that. And then in the spring, the last of our 6 new courses is AP Computer Science with Miss Gabrielle Martin. Miss Martin did a pretty in-depth training in Boone, North Carolina this summer, which means that she is able to teach that and we're able to offer it to our students. That's a great one too because it's an AP class, but there are no prerequisites, and we actually have some 9th graders who have already signed up for that in the spring. So that's what's new at the high school right now. Any questions for me?
Very good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Owen.
Thank you.
Next is the action item of the agenda, and discussion on foreclosure actions. Mr. Cole.
Members of the board, item 8 is the first action item. It is specific to a recommendation to move foreclosure actions to another law firm. We have been engaged with the same law firm for several years anytime land foreclosures come up. And I can't speak for the past, but the latest land foreclosure that we've been working through, we have received no updates or communication from the law firm since February 23rd of 2021, even though I send them a monthly email to give both me and the board an update on where we are on those foreclosure proceedings. And I have warned both of the last 2 months that if we did not receive an update, we would be looking to possibly engage a new law firm specific to foreclosures both now and in the future. I still have not gotten any update, and so I'm just recommending that we move this foreclosure action to another law firm. I've done some research and found the law firm that the county uses for their land foreclosure issues, that it's based out of Asheville.
Can I just add to that, I guess, in all of those emails to the previous attorney, Mr. Cole has copied me in all of those, so I was aware that there's not been any responses over the last few months to all those emails as well. So just want to make sure that everybody knew that I had been included in that conversation, I guess, just for completeness and transparency there. So we have a recommendation to change law firms to this one out of Asheville. Is there any comments or discussion or questions?
Mr. Chairman, is there any issue with the new firm accepted what we've already had completed by the previous?
Well, I don't think there will be, but I have not contacted them yet. I didn't want to contact them until the board had agreed on that action.
Ms. Becker, are you able to hear all of that?
Yes, thank you.
So it's been how many months? It's been since February, hasn't it? We haven't
The
received-
last communication I
That was-
received from our previous law firm was February 23rd of 2021. I mean, I understand if the court has kind of been locked up at times during this due to COVID, but that doesn't keep anyone from answering an email.
Any other questions or comments? So is there a motion that we switch law firms and go with the one out of Asheville? Or do we want to stay the one that hasn't communicated?
I would like to make a motion to use the new law firm
Out of Asheville.
out of Asheville.
Okay. So we have a motion by Ms. Crawford that we contact this law firm out of Asheville for foreclosures of properties due to fines and forfeitures in the court system. Is there a second to that?
So,
Mr. Jones, second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Cole.
Thank you.
Next, we have the request for remote instruction.
Yes, members of the board, back in on August, I think this is right, August 11th, the board voted on a parent option for mass for the students. They met again on August 18th and rescinded that decision and decided to require masks for staff and students. When the initial decision was made, parents who the board felt that we needed to offer a remote option to parents who were concerned about COVID spread if masks were optional. Even though legally the board was not required to provide that virtual option. So I informed the public through our Facebook page, our website, and a call that if they had until August 18th to inform the principal of their school that due to concerns of COVID spread, that they would like to request a fully remote option. And I made it clear that this would be a virtual option approved by the board for the first semester only at this time, and that the board would revisit that at the end of first semester to decide if they would allow that option for second semester. It was also made clear that students that were fully remote would not be eligible for extracurricular activities like sports, with the idea that if you are requesting fully virtual instruction because you're concerned about the spread of COVID, that surely, you would be much more exposed as a member of a sport or an extracurricular club meeting in close quarters, even more so than you would be in a classroom. So we agreed to do that. We compiled a list of the parents that requested fully remote instruction by the end of the day on August 18th. I gave you those numbers at the board meeting on August 18th. The question that we have to decide tonight is whether we are going to provide remote instruction for parents that requested it after the August 18th deadline. At this point, we are requiring masks, so we're fully complying with all of the CDC recommendations. And again, legally, whether we were or not, the board is not required to provide virtual instruction. But the board can elect to do so. And so just for planning purposes at the school, we have had, I believe up to this point, 6 students, well, the parents of 6 students have requested that they be moved to fully remote, 6 additional students from the list that we had on August 18th. There is certainly a cost associated with each student that is enrolled in the third-party virtual instruction. And I want to make it clear as well that this would not include students that are quarantined due to contact tracing or being positive for COVID. Our teachers would be required to provide instruction for those students, no different than a student that is suspended from school. They want to come to school, but they're not allowed to for 14 days. So that is not their fault. Their teachers would provide instruction during that time. This would be for folks that are requesting fully remote instruction for the remainder of the semester.
So board, since the August 18th deadline, we've had 6 additional requests. And so the thing to consider is, do we want to try to extend this deadline until maybe the end of this week, through the first week of school, to allow additional?
So, Mr. Chairman, just to be clear, we had 6 additional, but we did not have any that moved from virtual to in-person because of the mask.
We had, I believe it was 3 that requested, that were on the original list we had on August 18th, that complied with the directions from the district, that after masks were required, they decided to send their students to school. And then since that date, we've had 6 students whose parents have requested fully remote instruction.
Is that only for high school, or is it pre-K all the way up to high school?
We've had no additional requests for fully remote instruction at the primary school. We had 3 at the elementary school, 2 at the middle school, and 1 at the high school. Now, actually, we had 2 at the high school, but one of those students is a medically fragile student who has an approved waiver anyway. They had it last year, so that really doesn't count. We're going to provide remote instruction for those that have an approved medical waiver anyway. These are, what we're talking about is students that do not have a documented medical exemption.
And to be clear too, those medical exemptions, I mean, if they happen in a month from now, that person can choose to go remote and enlist remote at that time. So
just like, I mean, we've always done that.
So
if something happens where a student is in danger in coming to school, or if they have a medically fragile parent at home that they have to go to, or they get in a wreck, or they, anything like that where they can't access their instruction at school, then we provide homebound instruction or remote instruction based on their needs. Yeah, we would always do that.
any other questions, comments? Ms. Beck, are you able to hear all of that clearly as well again?
Yes, I would just like to make a comment, that my feeling when we voted to provide remote learning, it was going to be conditional for those people who truly needed this option, and not for those who just wanted it to opt out of class for some reason. That doesn't seem to be an issue. We're offering it for everybody, or anybody who wants it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes, I think clearly the goal of the board's approval of that remote instruction by parent request prior to the 18th was because masks were a parent option, and there were parents who expressed concern about COVID spread because masks were not being required and they wanted a remote option. And the board elected to provide that out of those concerns. But I think now we have obviously a different situation and that brings forth this question of what about now after the 18th for those that are not medically fragile or do not have a medically fragile person living in their home that are requesting to go fully remote for other reasons. Does the board want to honor that for those parents as well?
So our options are to leave it as is with the deadline August 18th, and anybody that requests after that has to have a medically valid reason for doing so.
They have to meet the criteria for being medically fragile, which is defined by the state already. Another option is you could extend the deadline, say for 1 week or longer, or you could decide to extend it for the first semester.
comments? Anybody want to make a motion?
And let me just add a couple other things. One, our data shows that most of our kids are not successful fully remote.
That's right.
So that's up front.
Yeah.
About 15% of our students have shown that they can be successful or have the support structure necessary to be successful learning in a fully remote environment. And then two, if you elect to allow an extension of this for however long, I would ask that if they select to go fully remote, that they remain remote for first semester, because it's too difficult for the students and the teachers for them to be bouncing back and forth.
The 18th, it was last Wednesday, is that right? Wait, yeah,
Correct.
that was last Wednesday, that was.
Mr. Cole, on the medical excuse, probably not the proper way to ask it. Can you kind of, I can't remember, forgive me, but could you just tell us here what is the criteria for that?
Well, essentially a note from a doctor. We have a form that the doctor fills out and the parent fills out that explains exactly why they meet the medically fragile criteria, and the parent signs off on it. Obviously, it could be a million things. Mainly, we're taking the doctor's word on the fact that based on the student's issues or the issues of a person that lives in the house who may be high risk, that this student needs to have remote instruction accessible to them. But that could be any number of diagnoses. So essentially, it's a doctor's note saying so.
Okay, will that be the principals that will be in charge of that, or also you to decide whether it's medical,
So
yea or nay for approval?
That is correct. We have a form that has to be filled out, that the parent would fill that out, and their doctor would fill that out. They would submit that form to the school. It would be reviewed by the principal and the school nurse. And then they would make a recommendation to me. And then we would enroll them. If they approved that, then we would enroll them in Ed Minimum or North Carolina Virtual Public School at the high school level. But I don't plan on getting into a whole lot of back and forth with a doctor. I mean, if they say that they're medically fragile, then they know way better than me. I'm not going to get into that.
Any other thoughts or questions? Make a motion.
I just think that, Mr. Chairman, that we changed course on the mask on the 18th. And for those parents that might have concerns because of that maybe I feel that we should give them some time to be allowed to consider virtual, just so we can understand what everybody needs through this first semester. We've already agreed that we could allow it through this semester. Maybe the 1st of September. They can have maybe a week until a week and a half. That's just my thoughts.
Any other thoughts?
I don't know that we should extend it that far out. That's just mine. I think if anything, it could be this week, being the first week of school, and a decision needs to be made. I think for our educators especially, they need to know. So I would, and I get what you're saying too, because we made that change on the 18th, and so this Wednesday would make a week for that. So I think if anything, we extend it this week, and then after Friday, or any day this week that we decide, then that's it. I wouldn't want to extend it any further.
And typically, like a drop ad, Mr. Oakland, is the first week of classes as well. Is that correct?
So you get the 5 days. So to me, that would be.
I'll add this caveat as well. It can take up to 72 hours upon notification to the company that we need to add a student to get them enrolled and into their classes. So that's the maximum amount of time, but they put in their paperwork that it can take up to 72 hours to get them enrolled and going in the class. So the longer we wait, the longer it takes to get them going.
I mean, is it too short notice to say Wednesday? I mean, that's a week from a decision. Or is that too?
Yeah, I mean, I just was thinking cut and dry time of the first of the month, but Friday's the 29th, I guess.
27th. Yeah. 27th.
I mean, so either those,
Yeah.
I'm okay with
close.
that. I'm okay if we want to do that.
Ms. Beck, did I hear you?
No, sir, we're
Okay.
settled in on the 25th.
Well, the 27th, possibly extending it to Friday, the 27th,
That kind of goes on.
Okay, yes,
which kind of goes along with the drop ad with the high school.
right. Okay, I'll agree with that, yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Caldwell, is that consider that your motion?
Then, Ms. Crawford, on that?
Or did
Yeah.
you,
I'll make a motion to extend it to the 25th.
25th?
Or, excuse me, 27th. She said
Okay.
20. I'm so sorry about that. For
So
Friday.
Friday, August the 27th.
Friday, August 27th. Because that'll go along with drop ad and everything.
So close of business Friday, which for us is 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's the motion that we extend that deadline for remote instruction to Friday, August the 27th. Close of business, which is 4 o'clock.
And also I want to reiterate that, with that, I would say that that's it, unless there's a medical exemption. Once they do that, then they're remote.
That's the final.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? Mr. Jones, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thanks, Mr. Cole. Thank you, board. Next, we have approval of the consent agenda. In that consent agenda, we have the board meeting minutes for June 26th, our regular session, the August 11th special session, and August 18th special session. And just as a reminder, if there's something that needs to be discussed separately, any of those items can be pulled out and voted on separately. We have the policies for action that are listed there. That's for the second read. Here you go. Okay. Also have a list of policies for first read that's there. And then there's policy 7720, which is the employee political activities policy. There's quite a few changes to that policy, and it's under the first read section, and Mr. Cole is going to elaborate on that just a little bit.
Yes, just really, I know normally we don't elaborate on the consent agenda, but I felt there were some changes that the North Carolina School Boards Association made to this particular policy code that we already had. It's an update, but it was updated quite a bit. I also think that it addresses some of the concerns that have been brought to me by parents just about the social studies standards and how we teach social studies and that sort of thing. So I just wanted to read this. So the policy update reads as follows. Employment or volunteer service with the school system does not preclude an individual from participating in political activities such as registering and voting, campaigning for candidates or issues, running for or serving in public office, attending political events, and contributing funds to partisan groups or candidates. These political activities must not, number one, take place during work hours, number two, involve school system funds or materials, number three, make use of an official school position to encourage or to coerce students, employees, or others to support or oppose a political party, candidate, or issue. As specified in Policy 2220, official school spokesperson, the chairperson of the Clay County Board of Education, the board or designee, and the superintendent or designee are the official spokespersons for the school system. Employees, when exercising their rights as citizens, should take steps to ensure that their personal political activities or opinions are not erroneously attributed to the board or the school system. This policy should not be construed as prohibiting the impartial study and discussion of political or other controversial issues in the classroom setting. However, employees must be mindful of their responsibility to deliver the curriculum of the school system and may not present their personal political views to students in the classroom or when otherwise engaged in the instruction of students. So I just wanted to be clear about that is what, if approved, then that's what our policy will require as an update. It already required that, but in different words. So I just wanted to read that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Make a motion.
Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Jones.
I'll second it.
Ms. Beck, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And now at this time, I'll entertain a motion that we go into closed session to discuss personnel and negotiations.
Make a motion, we go into closed session.
Mr. Jones first. Second. Mr. Caldwell, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your